To you, Jonah. Could you tell us, first, let's go by what we have on ground, your own kind of books. What are the books that really influenced your life? The books that really, forged and, shaped your trajectory as a publisher, as a reader. I know you're an ardent reader. Hello, Jonah. Are you still there?
Yes. Hello. Good evening to everyone. Thanks for inviting me, Osaze, my friend. It's good to be here, and good evening to all the honorable writers that have spoken so far, and to everyone else who's listening. Well, what can I say? I'm very honored to be here, and as dreadful as this pandemic is, I'm really enjoying the fact that I can talk to my screen and be in a conversation with all of you who are very far from where I am at the moment. And let me just say something about literacy and literacy efforts. First of all, let me say that Germany is not we don't have a very big oral tradition, so we don't have a lot of stories being told to us by our parents. But what we do have is we do have a lot of books in circulation, and I'm really lucky about that, because when I grew up, my father's also a teacher and my mother's a writer, so we had quite a large library at home. And I remember during one summer holiday, I got bored and I started counting all the books that we had in our library. And I think I stopped at 1,000. And I remember I could not believe there were so many books. And also in Leipzig, where I live, there's this thing that people do when they sort out items at home, like tableware or clothing or books. They put it in a box outside of their door. So when people take a walk, they can just look through these boxes and take whatever they want. So this means that books here are not, you don't have to be wealthy to have a large library, because like half of my library is made up of books that I got for free on the street. But it's always a good thing to have a lot of books and stories in circulation. And I think whoever holds power in the world, that should be their priority, to really make sure that that books and publishing infrastructure is something that's really invested into. Yes, so what books could I tell you about? I was really happy that I can relate with a lot of stories that you have already talked about. And I think it's so fascinating that some stories really travel the world. Like one of you said earlier, finding out about Amos Tutola through a Japanese writer. That's so amazing that we can have this conversation, even though I'm quite far away. So I would like to tell about one book that influenced me a lot. So this is probably Mirror Inverted, and also it's in German. But this book was translated in 10 or 15 languages. I don't think it's very famous though. It's called Gaming Instinct. It was released in 2004, and I remember, so I was 13 when I read it. And it's the story of two very intellectually precocious people who are in a private high school in Germany, and they are really bored because they are much more intellectual than their fellow students. So they decide to play a prank on one of their teachers, and they manipulate him into a situation that he later gets convicted for in front of a court. And this was a really interesting story for me, because these two teenagers, they tried to reveal the discrepancy between law and justice. And I remember reading it when I was young, and it really was a paradigm shift for me, because it's obvious that the teenagers are guilty, but still the teacher is being sent to prison for what they did. And this really made me doubt the congruence between law and justice for the first time. And ever since, I think, so this story really politicized me, and ever since, when politicians pushed through something, I think I started to check it against my own ideas of right and wrong. And I would say if a book for young adults manages to politicize children through the story, that's a really good book. Yes, but as of African books, in Germany, there are so many Nigerian books that are really famous. I don't know where to start, because I think a lot of classics are very well known to all of you, and we don't have to talk about them. But one book that really inspired me recently and made me think a lot was Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, about a girl. Actually, the main character of this German book that I just talked about is called Ada, which is not a common name at all in Germany. And the main character of Freshwater is also called Ada. And I don't know, this is something that reoccurs in my life. This character in different books, especially by African writers, there are a lot of Adas. So this is a character that travels with me throughout my life, but always different ones. And in this Ada of the Freshwater book, she has multiple personalities, what in Germany is considered a pathological disorder that you are being sent to a psychiatric ward for. But in this book, Emezi really manages to have a very interesting take on this, on these multiple personalities, because Ada does not perish from the voices in her head, but there is some sort of inspiration for her and for her to grow more strength. And what's very interesting is that Emezi explores these different voices through the means of Igbo culture and brings in the concept of the Ogbanye, and that for me was a whole new word. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think you
Ogbanje.
tried. Okay. Ogbanje. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
I can see some lips moving, but I cannot. Yeah, okay. Ogbanje. Yeah, and that was a whole new way for me to perceive psyche and spirit, which was really interesting. Otherwise, a lot of Nigerian books have shaped my path of reading and perceiving literature. Of course, The Famished Road by Ben Okri, also The Fisherman by Chigozie Obioma, for the way that he talks about a river. He gives agency to a river, which was very uncommon for me before. Of course, The Famished Road was my introduction to magical realism and Spirit Children, for example. And then, yes, The Palm White Drunkard, also a really great book, especially since there's a lot of pidgin English and, this old language debate. Yes. And then I think also recently, or within the past 2 or 3 years, was Oil on Water by Habila, because it really made me understand the extent of environmental pollution and the oil crisis in Nigeria. Yes, I think that's enough for now. Thank you so much for having me. It's really interesting and inspiring to hear all your stories.
Awesome. Thank you very much for giving us that fresh vista. And it's actually most heartwarming to know that over there in Germany, Nigerian writers are quite popular. And I'm highly impressed that, your repertoire of Nigerian writers, you know them, you know the books and everything. I think you actually do know them more than I do here. And I think it's a plus. Keep it up, Jona. So